Chapter 6. Cannabis. 6.1 From ancient times to modern day, cannabis. Cannabis, also known by various other names such as marijuana, weed, or pot, is a plant genus that comprises several species, including Cannabis sativa, Cannabis indica, and Cannabis ruderalis. The history of cannabis use dates back thousands of years. Ancient civilizations recognized the plant for its psychoactive and medicinal properties. Archaeological evidence suggests that cannabis was used in ancient China as far back as 4000 BC for various purposes, including, but not limited to, fiber production, food, and ritualistic spiritual practices. The Chinese also documented the therapeutic aspects of cannabis in one of the world's earliest medical texts, the Shenong Bensao Jing, which was compiled around 200 to 300 AD. Cannabis spread throughout the ancient world, reaching regions like India, where it was used for its psychoactive effects and as an analgesic. In Indian societies, cannabis has long been intertwined with cultural and religious practices. It was consumed in the form of bhang, a preparation that mixed the leaves of the plant with milk, spices, and ghee. This concoction has been, and continues to be, a traditional offering to the Hindu deity Shiva. Indian medical texts from the 2nd century AD, such as the Sushruta Samhita, described the use of cannabis for treating a variety of conditions, showing a profound understanding of its medicinal benefits. Cannabis's journey continued westward. The ancient Greeks and Romans were aware of the plant, mainly using it for its seeds and fiber. However, there are accounts by writers such as Herodotus, who, in the 5th century BC, described a group of people known as the Scythians inhaling the smoke of burning cannabis seeds and flowers to induce a state of intoxication. While these European civilizations did not embrace the psychoactive properties of cannabis as much as others, they contributed to the spread and knowledge of its other uses, primarily in textiles and folk medicine. During the medieval period, cannabis was introduced into the Arab world. It was used medicinally, as well as recreationally. Islamic physicians wrote about cannabis, noting its therapeutic effects, particularly as a pain remedy. However, the recreational use of cannabis was sometimes at odds with religious doctrine, leading to debates and varying degrees of acceptance across different Islamic societies. By the late medieval period, cannabis had become a part of the materia medica across a substantial portion of the Middle East. The Age of Exploration in the 15th and 16th centuries facilitated cannabis's global spread. Sailors used hemp ropes and sails, owing to their durability and resistance to saltwater decay. As European powers established colonies across the world, the cannabis plant found new territories in which to grow. It became an essential crop, not only for its practical applications in the maritime industry, but also for its medicinal properties, which European doctors started to recognize more widely. Cannabis was introduced to the Americas with the arrival of the European colonists. Hemp cultivation was encouraged for its utility in textiles, ropes, and sails. It wasn't until the 19th century that cannabis began to be recognized for its psychoactive properties in the Western Hemisphere. During this time, cannabis tinctures and extracts were commonly sold in pharmacies across the United States and Europe, used to treat a wide array of ailments including chronic pain, digestive problems, and even mental health issues. The early 20th century marked a significant shift in the perception of cannabis, as many nations began imposing prohibitions and restrictions. These efforts were largely due to emerging international treaties and domestic concerns about the recreational use of cannabis. The United States, for example, effectively outlawed cannabis with the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, which heavily taxed the sale and possession of cannabis, setting the stage for its status as an illicit substance for many decades to come. Despite the global trend toward prohibition, scientific interest in cannabis persisted. Researchers in the mid-20th century began to isolate and synthesize its active compounds, revealing the plant's complex chemistry. The discovery of tetrahydrocannabinol (THC) by Israeli scientists in the 1960s proved to be a major breakthrough. THC was identified as the primary psychoactive component of cannabis, leading to an increased understanding of how cannabis affects the human body and mind. The closing decades of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century saw a gradual shift in attitudes toward cannabis. Multiple factors contributed to this paradigm shift, including advocacy for medical cannabis, the recognition of the potential therapeutic benefits, and failures recognized in the war on drugs. Consequently, various jurisdictions across the globe have started to decriminalize or legalize cannabis, both for medical and recreational use. In places such as Canada, certain parts of the United States, and Uruguay, this shift in policy has fostered new industries and research opportunities. Today, cannabis continues to be a subject of debate and research. Its use now extends to a range of pharmaceutical, therapeutic, and recreational products. Medical research currently explores the efficacy of cannabis in treating conditions such as multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, chronic pain, and has opened a dialogue about the potential benefits versus risks. This extensive journey from ancient times to the modern day highlights the dynamic history of cannabis and its evolving role in society. As policies continue to change, the scientific community is gaining a better grasp of the plant's capabilities, prompting further examination and potential medical advancements. 6.2 Cannabis and its role in society. Cannabis has a storied history and complex presence in social contexts around the world. Historically, cannabis has been used for medicinal, recreational, and spiritual purposes. It has been documented in ancient texts, highlighting its role in rituals and traditional medicine across different cultures. In modern society, the role of cannabis is multifaceted and often polarizing. It is seen as both a beneficial medicine and a recreational substance with potential risks. Medicinally, cannabis has been recognized for its potential therapeutic effects. Its active compounds, primarily THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and CBD, cannabidiol, interact with the body's endocannabinoid system, which can influence pain sensation, appetite, mood, and memory. Cannabis is used to treat a variety of conditions, such as chronic pain, nausea from chemotherapy, multiple sclerosis spasticity, and epilepsy. Many jurisdictions have legalized or decriminalized cannabis for medical use, reflecting a growing acceptance of its potential benefits in healthcare settings. Recreationally, cannabis is consumed for its psychoactive effects, which can include relaxation, altered perception, and euphoria. Its social use varies widely, from casual use among friends to more habitual consumption patterns. Although recreational cannabis use remains illegal in many places, there has been an increasing trend toward legalization and regulation, similar to alcohol and tobacco. This shift is often driven by arguments for economic benefits through taxation, reduced criminal justice expenses, and control over product safety and quality. Cannabis also plays a significant role in the economy. In regions where it is legal, a vast industry has emerged encompassing cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and retail. The cannabis industry has created jobs, stimulated investment, and generated tax revenue. Nonetheless, the economic impact of cannabis is complex. The illegal market persists in many areas, and there are concerns about market saturation and the long-term viability of cannabis businesses in an increasingly competitive landscape. The legalization of cannabis also highlights social justice issues. Prohibitionist drug policies have disproportionately impacted marginalized communities, leading to higher rates of arrest and incarceration for cannabis-related offenses among minority populations. Legalization efforts often include initiatives to address these disparities through social equity programs. Such programs aim to assist individuals and communities that have been adversely affected by the historical criminalization of cannabis. The public health implications of cannabis play a critical role in shaping societal views and policies. Cannabis use can have various health effects, both positive and negative. Short-term effects can include impaired coordination and cognition, which may affect activities such as driving. Long-term or heavy use has been associated with risks such as addiction, mental health issues like anxiety or depression, and potential respiratory problems from smoking. Public health strategies focus on harm reduction, education, and research to better understand and mitigate these risks. The cultural representation of cannabis is also notable, as it has permeated music, film, literature, and art. Cultural depictions of cannabis have evolved over time, often reflecting and shaping societal attitudes. While earlier representation may have emphasized counterculture and anti-establishment sentiments, contemporary portrayals often focus on normalization and the mundane aspects of cannabis use. The changing cultural landscape has played a part in destigmatizing cannabis, although stereotypes and misconceptions persist. The legal status of cannabis is a contentious issue globally. While some countries have embraced an approach towards decriminalization or legalization, others maintain strict prohibition. Legal frameworks often dictate the permissible reasons for cannabis use, possession limits, and regulatory oversight. These laws influence how society perceives cannabis and its users, and they can have profound implications for the criminal justice system, the economy, and public health. In educational settings, the presence of cannabis raises important considerations. Drug education programs aim to provide accurate information about cannabis and its effects. There is a growing need for these programs to address the changing legal landscape and mixed messages that young people may receive about cannabis. Educational strategies may include critical thinking about substance use, understanding the developing brain's vulnerability to drugs, and discussing the legal and social consequences of cannabis use. Religious and spiritual uses of cannabis trace back thousands of years. Various religious groups have used cannabis in their rituals and sacraments, viewing it as a means to enhance spiritual experiences. The Rastafarian religion is one example where cannabis, referred to as ganja, is considered a sacrament. The religious use of cannabis presents unique legal and social challenges, particularly in regions where it remains illegal. There is an ongoing debate concerning religious freedom and drug control policies. The debate over cannabis also encompasses ethical considerations. There are differing viewpoints on the morality of cannabis use, with some seeing it as a vice while others view it as a personal choice with potential benefits. Ethical debates extend to issues like the impact on adolescents, the rights of employees vis-a-vis workplace drug policies, and the implications of cannabis use during pregnancy. Ethical discussions often influence public opinion, policymaking, and the direction of scientific research on cannabis. Cannabis holds a complex role in society, with its history and impact touching numerous aspects of life, from medicine and economics to culture and law. As the legal landscape continues to evolve, so too will societal perspectives on cannabis. An in-depth understanding of the multifarious facets of cannabis is critical to crafting informed, fair, and equitable policies that balance the interests of public health, economic prosperity, social justice, and individual freedoms. 6.3 Psychological aspects of cannabis. Cannabis has various psychological effects that have been of interest to both researchers and consumers. These effects can be attributed to the presence of cannabinoids, a group of substances found in the cannabis plant, with delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, being the most psychoactive. When cannabis is consumed, THC binds to cannabinoid receptors in the brain, altering normal brain communication. It primarily affects the areas associated with memory, pleasure, thinking, concentration, movement, coordination, and sensory and time perception. Understanding these effects is critical to grasp both the therapeutic potential and risks of cannabis use. The immediate psychological effects of cannabis include a sense of euphoria or the high that users seek, characterized by elation, relaxation, and often an altered perception of space and time. User reports also frequently mention heightened sensory perception, for example, brighter colors, sharper sounds, and an enhanced sense of taste. In conjunction with these sensations, other immediate effects may include increased appetite, commonly known as the munchies, and altered physical awareness. It is crucial to note that while some users consider these effects pleasant, others might experience discomfort or anxiety. The experience an individual has when using cannabis can be influenced by several factors, such as the plant's potency, concentration of THC, the method of consumption, the setting in which it is used, the user's personality, and their previous experiences with the drug. For instance, cannabis ingested through smoking takes effect rapidly and allows the user to titrate to the desired level of intoxication more easily. In contrast, when consumed as an edible, the onset of effects is delayed, and users may consume more to achieve the desired effect, sometimes leading to excessively potent intoxication and associated anxiety or paranoia. Additionally, the psychological response to cannabis can involve mood changes. Cannabis use can lead to relaxation and an alleviated mood in some individuals, but can equally result in anxiety, nervousness, or paranoia in others, especially at higher doses. Some users might also experience transient hallucinogenic effects, such as visual or auditory distortions. Long-term or high-frequency use of cannabis has been associated with an increased risk of developing conditions such as cannabis use disorder, characterized by a problematic pattern of cannabis use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress. Cannabis use may impact cognitive functions, with users often experiencing difficulties with attention, memory, and executive functions during intoxication. Research indicates that these effects are typically temporary. However, longer-term use, particularly initiated during adolescence, may lead to more permanent cognitive decline. This is particularly concerning since adolescence represents a critical period of brain development, and cannabis use during this time may disrupt the maturation process of the brain's structure and function. The potential development of psychological dependence on cannabis is a topic of ongoing research and debate. Dependence is characterized by a strong desire to use the drug, difficulties in controlling its use, persistent use despite harmful consequences, a higher priority given to drug use than to other activities and obligations, increased tolerance, and sometimes a physical withdrawal state. Psychological dependence often manifests as an individual using cannabis to deal with stress, boredom, or other psychological states, thereby reinforcing its use as a coping mechanism. The therapeutic applications of cannabis are tied to its psychological effects. For instance, it has been utilized in palliative care to alleviate anxiety and improve mood among patients with terminal illnesses. In other contexts, medical cannabis is employed to alleviate chronic pain, which also has a psychological dimension. Pain relief can indirectly improve mood and general well-being. However, these therapeutic uses require careful supervision and should be weighed against possible adverse effects, especially given the variability in individual responses to cannabis. The relationship between cannabis and the risk of developing psychiatric disorders has been the subject of intense investigation. Some studies suggest that cannabis use, especially frequent and high-dose intake, might increase the risk of schizophrenia or other forms of psychosis, particularly in genetically predisposed individuals. However, the nature of this relationship remains unclear, and determining causality is challenging. Researchers must consider confounding factors such as the coincidence of cannabis use with other risk factors for psychosis. We must also consider the effects of cannabis on pre-existing psychological conditions. Patients with mood disorders like depression or anxiety disorders may experience worsening symptoms after cannabis use. This is particularly important since individuals with these conditions may self-medicate with cannabis without a thorough understanding of the potential for these adverse reactions. Healthcare professionals should be attentive to the use of cannabis in patients with mental health disorders and offer guidance based on clinical evidence. Finally, exploring the psychological aspects of cannabis requires addressing the social and legal context of its use. Legalization in some regions has led to increased research, changes in public perception, and a shift in usage patterns. Educating the public about the psychological effects of cannabis, as well as developing and implementing preventive and treatment strategies for its misuse, is essential. Remaining informed and receptive to new research findings will ensure that policies and healthcare practices concerning cannabis use are evidence-based and promote the well-being of individuals and society as a whole. 6.4 Cannabis in cultural practices. Cannabis has been deeply integrated into various cultural practices around the world for centuries. Its use spans across continents and is woven into the social, religious, and medical fabrics of several societies. This chapter section delves into the diverse ways cultures have utilized cannabis and the significance it holds within these practices. In some societies, cannabis has held a sacred place in religious ceremonies and rituals. In Hinduism, cannabis is associated with the deity Shiva and is consumed during festivals like Holi and Shivratri. Devotees use cannabis in the form of bhang, a preparation of cannabis leaves and flowers mixed with milk, spices, and sometimes fruits, to achieve a state believed to bring them closer to the divine. Such practices have a long-standing history in India and have been mentioned in ancient texts, suggesting that the use of cannabis in religious contexts is deeply rooted in the region's history. Conversely, in Rastafarian culture, which emerged in Jamaica in the 1930s, cannabis, or ganja as it is often called, is regarded as a spiritual substance. Rastafarians use cannabis in meditative and communal settings to enhance personal introspection and social bonding. The use of cannabis within this context is perceived as a means to access a higher spiritual consciousness, a practice that has been both a part of religious rituals and an everyday activity to promote a sense of unity and spiritual connection among its members. The use of cannabis in traditional medicine has also been prevalent across different cultures. In Chinese medicine, it has been documented as an herbal remedy for various ailments ranging from rheumatic pain to constipation and even absent-mindedness. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote about the Scythians' use of cannabis steam baths to cleanse the body and spirit. This illustrates cannabis' role as an early form of aromatherapy and highlights its historical medicinal applications, which were acknowledged long before the modern discourse on cannabis as a medicine. In the realm of art and creativity, cannabis has influenced various cultural outputs. Historically, cannabis use has been reported among writers, musicians, and artists who claimed that it aided their creative processes. It was particularly prominent among jazz musicians in the early 20th century, who used cannabis as a tool to enhance their musical innovation. This cultural practice of consuming cannabis to stimulate creativity has persisted, influencing a wide range of artistic expressions and genres over the years. African cultures have also incorporated cannabis into their medical and cultural practices. The drug is often used in traditional African medicine. In some regions, it is used as a treatment for asthma, epilepsy, and in childbirth preparations. Cannabis also plays a role in social customs, for instance, as a means of welcoming guests and ceremonial gift exchanges. This integration of cannabis into daily and ceremonial practices reflects its multifaceted role in African societies. In the Americas, particularly in South and Central American indigenous cultures, cannabis was not indigenous but integrated after contact with European settlers. It became a part of ethnomedicine and was used in rituals for healing and divination. The adoption of cannabis into their culture represents the blending of indigenous practices with influences introduced through colonization, as European herbology combined with traditional remedies. Moreover, in some modern subcultures, particularly in the West, cannabis has been championed as a symbol of resistance against mainstream societal norms and as an agent for social change. During the 1960s and 1970s, it was adopted by the counterculture movement as a means to challenge the status quo, advocating for peace, love, and personal freedom. These sentiments have continued to inform contemporary discussions about cannabis and its legal status. The ceremonial use of cannabis is not confined to ancient practices. It is also present in contemporary events. In recent years, cannabis weddings have emerged in regions where recreational use has been legalized. These ceremonies incorporate cannabis into various aspects of the event, from bouquet arrangements to cannabis-infused edibles offered to guests. This modern adoption represents not only the breaking of traditional customs, but also the development of new cultural practices centered around the plant. In the context of festivals and celebrations, cannabis has been a fixture in events like Amsterdam's Cannabis Cup and the various 420th celebrations held around the world. These events not only serve as gatherings for enthusiasts and advocates, but also play a role in the normalization and destigmatization of cannabis use within society. They provide a space for cultural expression and the sharing of knowledge about cannabis cultivation, laws, and medicinal properties. On a smaller scale, cannabis plays a role in personal cultural practices and lifestyle choices. For many individuals, the responsible, recreational use of cannabis has become a way to relax, socialize, and engage with a broader community of like-minded people. These personal rituals may involve the use of specific strains, forms of consumption, and the setting in which cannabis is used, reflecting the importance of individual preferences and the intricate relationship between cannabis and cultural identity. In conclusion, cannabis has a complex and diverse history in cultural practices around the globe. From ancient religious traditions to modern medical applications, and from personal recreation to its place in the arts, cannabis has been, and continues to be, an integral part of human cultural expression. Its profound impact on various spheres of cultural life emphasizes the need for a nuanced understanding of the plant's role in society, past and present. As the global perspective on cannabis evolves, so too will its cultural significance, shaping new practices and traditions for future generations. This exploration of cannabis in cultural practices sheds light on the symbiotic relationship between human culture and this versatile plant. It highlights the importance of cultural context in understanding the use of cannabis and frames the ongoing conversation about its place within contemporary society. Whether in medicine, religion, art, or social customs, the enduring presence of cannabis in cultural practices is testament to its multifaceted importance to human societies across time. 6.5 The philosophy of natural drugs and cannabis. The debate over the categorization and use of naturally occurring drugs, such as cannabis, is a complex and multifaceted discussion within both scientific communities and society at large. Cannabis, a plant that has been used for thousands of years for medicinal, recreational, and spiritual purposes, sits at the center of this debate. Some argue that the natural status of cannabis should imply safety and acceptance, while others point out that natural substances can also be harmful. This section explores this philosophy through various lenses, including historical, cultural, and medical perspectives. Historically, natural drugs like cannabis were often the only remedies available to ancient civilizations. These substances were revered for their healing properties and were an integral part of traditional medicine practices. In some cultures, cannabis was not only a treatment for physical ailments, but also for spiritual distress. The historical use of cannabis is documented in several ancient texts, including Chinese, Indian, and Middle Eastern manuscripts, indicating its widespread significance in human history. However, historical use does not authenticate safety or efficacy. It shows a long-standing human relationship with the plant. Culturally, natural drugs frequently embody a connection to the earth and nature, which many communities regard as inherently good or pure. This perspective can influence the philosophy that natural drugs like cannabis are preferable to synthetic or man-made drugs. For some, there is a belief that the human body is better adapted to process natural substances. This belief often drives the assumption that because cannabis is a plant, it must be less harmful than synthetic drugs, but scientific evidence does not always support this notion. Medical discourse around cannabis and natural drugs has evolved significantly, especially as scientific methods have advanced. In the past, anecdotal evidence was the primary support for the use of cannabis. However, contemporary medicine demands rigorous testing and validation. Studies on cannabis have shown both potential therapeutic effects and risks. It contains compounds like tetrahydrocannabinol (THC) and cannabidiol (CBD), which interact with the body's endocannabinoid system, impacting various physiological processes. The medical community continues to research these interactions to better understand the implications of cannabis consumption. The philosophy of natural drugs also raises questions about the alteration and refinement of naturally occurring substances. Cannabis, when consumed in its raw, unprocessed form, is quite different from the products available in today's market, which may be concentrated or chemically altered to achieve certain potencies or effects. This brings up the issue of when a natural drug ceases to be natural due to human processing. The distinction between whole plant use and extracted compounds can have significant ramifications for discussions on health and safety. Within the realm of law and policy, the classification of cannabis as a natural drug has led to various legal statuses in different parts of the world. Some regions promote the use of natural substances like cannabis, citing traditional and medicinal uses, while others prohibit them, focusing on potential abuse and health hazards. The legalization movement has often employed arguments that emphasize cannabis's natural origins to support their cause, suggesting that prohibition goes against a historical and natural order. Philosophically, the concept of natural drugs intersects with ethics. The right to use a substance that occurs in nature can be argued as a matter of personal choice and freedom. Numerous advocates for cannabis legalization position their arguments within this ethical framework, suggesting that the prohibition of natural substances infringes on individual liberty. Moreover, they often compare the legal status of alcohol and tobacco, both of which pose known health risks, to the less harmful profile of cannabis as portrayed in some studies. Philosophical discussions about natural drugs are also grounded in considerations of cultural relativism. What is considered natural and acceptable in one culture may be viewed as harmful and illegal in another. This relative understanding of drugs like cannabis can lead to disparities in public health, legal systems, and international policies. Standardizing an approach to natural drugs requires balancing cultural differences with scientific findings and ethical principles. 6.6 Cannabis, Chemical Composition and Variants. Cannabis has been used both recreationally and medicinally for centuries. The plant itself falls under the genus Cannabis and is typically divided into 3 species: Cannabis sativa, Cannabis indica, and Cannabis ruderalis, each with its own set of characteristic traits and potential effects on the user. The chemical composition of cannabis comprises a complex mix of compounds, including cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids, which all contribute to its unique profile and effects. Understanding the chemical composition of cannabis is essential for both consumers and medical professionals, as it greatly impacts its efficacy and potential applications in the medical field. Cannabinoids are arguably the most critical group of compounds found in cannabis. Over 100 cannabinoids have been identified, but the 2 primary and most studied cannabinoids are delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol (THC) and cannabidiol (CBD). THC is the primary psychoactive constituent that is responsible for the high associated with recreational use. It binds with cannabinoid receptors in the brain, resulting in changes in perception, mood, consciousness, and behavior. CBD, on the other hand, is non-psychoactive and has been attributed with various therapeutic properties, including anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, and antipsychotic effects. It potentially modifies the effects of THC by influencing how it binds to cannabinoid receptors and can moderate its psychoactivity, which can be desirable in medical applications. Terpenes are a large and diverse class of organic compounds produced by a variety of plants, including cannabis. They are responsible for the distinct aromas and flavors of cannabis strains. Terpenes may also influence the therapeutic effects of cannabinoids by a mechanism known as the entourage effect. This theory suggests that terpenes may modify the overall effects of cannabis by enhancing its desirable properties and reducing its side effects. Some of the most common terpenes found in cannabis include myrcene, limonene, and pinene, which may have sedative, antidepressant, and anti-inflammatory properties, respectively. The flavonoids found in cannabis, around 20 of which are unique to the plant and termed canflavins, also contribute to the distinctive sensory properties and potential therapeutic benefits. These compounds are common in all plants and are responsible for their vivid colors. In cannabis, they may have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. Canflavin A, for example, has been shown to reduce inflammation by inhibiting the production of inflammatory molecules called prostaglandins. The interplay of flavonoids with cannabinoids and terpenes enhances the medical profile of different cannabis strains by contributing to their overall pharmacological effect. Variability in the chemical composition among cannabis strains is substantial and results in a diversity of effects which can be harnessed for specific therapeutic outcomes. Indica strains, for example, are generally associated with more sedative effects and are thus often recommended for conditions such as insomnia or pain relief. Sativa strains are characterized by a higher THC to CBD ratio and are thought to be more energizing, making them suitable for daytime use or for conditions like depression where a lifting effect may be beneficial. Ruderalis strains contain lower levels of THC and are less common for recreational use, but can be valuable for breeding programs due to their robustness and autoflowering characteristics. Additionally, the ratio of cannabinoids such as THC to CBD can dramatically influence the experience of the user. A high THC and low CBD strain, for instance, may result in a more intense psychoactive effect, while a strain with higher CBD may be more suitable for those seeking the medicinal benefits without strong psychoactive effects. Breeders have developed a range of hybrid strains that attempt to capture the best of both sativa and indica effects, or combine different cannabinoid and terpene profiles in novel ways to create unique experiences and therapeutic benefits. The quest for tailored cannabis treatments has led to the development of specialized strains and products that target specific medical conditions. High CBD strains, such as Charlotte's Web, have gained popularity for their potential to alleviate conditions like epilepsy and anxiety without causing significant psychoactive effects. Conversely, strains with a higher THC content may be used by medical patients who need relief from severe pain or nausea, especially those undergoing chemotherapy or suffering from debilitating conditions. Advanced extraction and processing techniques have enabled the creation of cannabis concentrates with purified and consistent chemical profiles. Products such as oils, waxes, and shatters offer higher potency and the possibility of more controlled dosing compared to traditional flower forms. These concentrates can have THC or CBD levels that exceed 90%, targeting consumers who may require higher levels of cannabinoids for treatment of their symptoms. The rise of cannabis concentrates highlights the need for comprehensive regulation to ensure safety, consistency, and proper labeling, which provides consumers with reliable information regarding cannabinoid content. The application of genetic mapping and biotechnological advancements in cannabis cultivation has greatly expanded our understanding of the plant's chemistry. This scientific interest has led to the discovery of minor cannabinoids such as cannabigerol, CBG, and cannabinol, CBN, which may have unique therapeutic benefits. For example, CBG is being researched for its potential to treat inflammatory bowel disease and glaucoma, while CBN is of interest for its apparent sedative effects. As research progresses, these lesser-known cannabinoids could pave the way for new therapeutic applications and further diversification of cannabis-based products. The chemical composition of cannabis is complex and varied, with each component playing a specific role in the overall effects of the plant. The differentiation between strains, the synergistic interactions between cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids, and the evolution of cannabis products all contribute to the adaptability and therapeutic potential of cannabis. With ongoing research and development, we continue to increase our understanding, allowing for more effective utilization of cannabis in both recreational and medical contexts. The chemical intricacies of cannabis necessitate a sophisticated approach to its classification, regulation, and application, ensuring that consumers and patients can make well-informed decisions about their use of cannabis products. 6.7. The physiological effects of cannabis. Cannabis, derived from the cannabis sativa or cannabis indica plant, is known for its psychoactive and physiological effects when consumed. These effects are primarily attributed to a group of compounds called cannabinoids, with delta-9-tetrahydrocannabinol (THC) being the principal psychoactive constituent. Understanding the physiological effects of cannabis involves examining how it interacts with the body's endocannabinoid system, ECS, a complex cell signaling system that plays a role in regulating a variety of functions and processes, including sleep, mood, appetite, memory, reproduction, and pain sensation. When cannabis is consumed, THC enters the bloodstream and quickly travels to the brain and other organs throughout the body. THC binding to the cannabinoid receptors, specifically CB1 receptors in the brain and central nervous system, and CB2 receptors in the peripheral organs and immune system, results in the activation of the ECS. This activation can cause alterations in the brain's normal functioning, leading to the most well-known effects of cannabis: changes in mood, altered perception and cognition, and an altered sense of time. The effects on mood can range from relaxation and euphoria to anxiety and paranoia, depending on individual sensitivity, the dose, and the strain of cannabis used. In the central nervous system, the interaction of THC with the ECS affects neurotransmitter release, which can modulate pain signaling pathways, leading to potential pain-relieving effects. This aspect of cannabis pharmacology is particularly significant in the context of medical use, where the analgesic properties of cannabis are sought to alleviate chronic pain and inflammation. Beyond analgesia, the anti-inflammatory effects of other cannabinoids, such as cannabidiol, CBD, contribute to cannabis's therapeutic potential. The acute effects of cannabis on cognition are characterized by impairments in short-term memory, judgment, decision-making, and psychomotor function. These cognitive effects can vary considerably and are influenced by an individual's tolerance, the potency of the cannabis preparation, and the environment in which the drug is used. The degree to which these effects translate to persistent cognitive deficits following prolonged use remains a subject of ongoing research and debate, with some studies suggesting possible long-term impacts on cognition, particularly when use begins during adolescence. The physiological impact of cannabis extends beyond the central nervous system. For instance, cannabis use affects the cardiovascular system by causing a temporary increase in heart rate and blood pressure upon consumption. This spike in heart rate can be substantial and poses a potential risk for individuals with pre-existing heart conditions. Additionally, the vasodilatory effects of cannabis may lead to red eyes, a common physical sign of recent cannabis use. Respiratory function is also affected by the consumption of cannabis, particularly when the drug is smoked. Inhalation of cannabis smoke delivers several combustion byproducts to the respiratory tract, which can lead to bronchial irritation and coughing. Long-term consumption via smoking may have an impact on pulmonary health, although the association with lung cancer remains unclear, with studies showing mixed results. Vaping, as an alternative to smoking, reduces exposure to these combustion byproducts, but is not without health risks, including the recent emergence of vaping-associated pulmonary injuries. Cannabis can have an impact on gastrointestinal function as well. Some users report alterations in appetite, often an increase known colloquially as the munchies, which stems from THC's action on the hypothalamus and limbic system, areas of the brain known to regulate hunger and satiety. This effect can be leveraged therapeutically for conditions such as cachexia in cancer patients, or to stimulate appetite in those with AIDS. The endocrine system and reproductive functions are not immune to the influence of cannabis. Research has indicated that chronic cannabis use might affect hormone levels and fertility. Studies have suggested disruptions in the normal functioning of the hypothalamic-pituitary-gonadal axis, potentially affecting testosterone levels in males and menstrual cycles in females, although findings have been mixed and definitive conclusions are elusive. Behavioral changes are another component of cannabis's physiological impact. In some individuals, cannabis use can lead to a state of relaxation or even sedation, while in others, it may result in increased sociability and talkativeness. These changes are often dose-dependent and subject to the individual's psychological state and the context of drug use. It is also important to consider the potential for cannabis use to exacerbate symptoms in individuals with psychiatric disorders, such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, a matter of growing concern for mental health professionals. Finally, the development of tolerance and dependence are potential physiological implications of chronic cannabis use. Tolerance describes a reduced response to the drug following repeated use, leading individuals to consume higher quantities to achieve the same effect. Dependence, on the other hand, is characterized by a withdrawal syndrome when cannabis use is ceased, which may include symptoms such as irritability, restlessness, insomnia, appetite disturbance, and mood swings. However, the dependence potential of cannabis is generally considered to be less than that of other drugs, such as alcohol or nicotine. Cannabis continues to be one of the most widely used psychoactive substances worldwide, making it imperative to understand its physiological effects comprehensively. Continued research into the long-term effects of cannabis use remains crucial, especially as its legal status and medical applications continue to evolve across different regions. This will help to better inform users, healthcare providers, and policymakers about the benefits and risks associated with cannabis consumption. 6.8 User experiences with cannabis. The user experiences of cannabis can significantly vary depending on numerous factors, including individual biology, the strain and potency of the cannabis used, the method of consumption, and the setting in which it is used. Recreational and medicinal users often report differing experiences based on their intentions and expectations, highlighting the subjective nature of cannabis effects. Some users describe the sensation of using cannabis as a feeling of relaxation and mild euphoria. This relaxation is often characterized by a decreased level of stress and a sense of calmness that can permeate both the mind and body. For some, it can lead to a greater appreciation of sensory experiences like music, art, and food, where users report a heightened sense of taste, touch, and auditory sensitivity. This altered sensory perception can be one of the appealing aspects of the cannabis experience for recreational users. Conversely, other users report a different set of experiences, such as increased anxiety or paranoia after consuming cannabis. These effects can vary from mild and manageable to severe, depending on the user's history with cannabis, the setting in which they consume it, and their current state of mental health. In particular, large doses or highly potent strains, especially those with high THC content, are more likely to induce these negative effects. It is essential for users, especially those new to cannabis, to start with lower dosages to mitigate such risks. For medicinal users, cannabis is primarily used to address specific health issues, such as chronic pain, insomnia, or lack of appetite. Many medicinal users report significant relief from their symptoms, which can lead to an improved quality of life. For instance, patients undergoing chemotherapy have found cannabis effective in reducing nausea and stimulating appetite, which can assist with their overall treatment process. These medical benefits are a key reason for the increasing push for cannabis legalization for medicinal purposes. The psychoactive effects of cannabis are predominantly attributed to the cannabinoid THC, or delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. THC binds to cannabinoid receptors in the brain and body, producing the high that is typically associated with cannabis use. However, user experiences are not solely limited to the psychoactive effects. The presence of other cannabinoids, like CBD or cannabidiol, can modulate the high and contribute to the therapeutic effects without inducing a significant psychoactive experience. The method of consumption is another factor influencing user experiences. Inhalation, through smoking or vaporizing, leads to a quicker onset of effects as the active compounds are rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream through the lungs. The rapid onset can make it easier for users to control their dosage, as they can gauge their level of intoxication within minutes. However, smoking carries its own health risks due to the inhalation of combustion byproducts. Edible cannabis products provide a different experience. The onset of effects is delayed, typically taking 30 minutes to 2 hours, because the active compounds are absorbed more slowly through the digestive system. The resulting high from edibles can last significantly longer and can be more intense than the high from inhalation. Inexperienced users can inadvertently consume too much, not realizing the delay in effects, leading to uncomfortable levels of intoxication. Another format growing in popularity is topical application, where cannabis-infused products are applied directly to the skin. These topicals may provide local pain relief and reduce inflammation without psychoactive effects, making them a convenient option for users seeking specific therapeutic benefits without intoxication. The setting, often referred to as set and setting, can greatly influence the cannabis experience. A comfortable, safe, and familiar environment can enhance the positive effects of cannabis, making the experience more pleasurable. On the contrary, a stressful or unfamiliar environment can heighten feelings of anxiety or paranoia. Experienced users often emphasize the importance of considering the set and setting before consuming cannabis to ensure a positive experience. Cannabis tolerance develops with regular use, meaning users may require larger quantities of cannabis to achieve the desired effects over time. This can lead to users experiencing differing effects as their usage patterns evolve. For recreational users, this might result in a diminished euphoria, necessitating a period of abstinence to reset tolerance levels. Medicinal users may need to consult with healthcare providers to adjust their dosage appropriately. Legal and social factors also influence user experiences with cannabis. In regions where cannabis is illegal, users may experience stress or fear related to the potential legal consequences of their use, which can negatively affect their overall experience. In contrast, in places where cannabis is legal, users might feel more at ease, contributing to a more positive experience. User experiences with cannabis are diverse and subject to a wide range of influencing factors. The understanding of these experiences is crucial for both recreational and medicinal users to responsibly consume cannabis and appreciate its effects. As the social, legal, and medical landscapes continue to evolve, so too will the collective understanding of cannabis user experiences. It's essential for users to stay informed about the risks and benefits, while researchers continue to explore the broad spectrum of effects that cannabis can have on the human experience. 6.9 Medical marijuana, benefits and controversies. The medical use of marijuana has become a topic of much debate and interest over the past several decades. Medical marijuana refers to the use of the cannabis plant or its chemical constituents, cannabinoids, to treat disease or alleviate symptoms. The cannabis plant has over 100 cannabinoids, but the two most widely studied components are delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol (THC) and cannabidiol (CBD). THC is the psychoactive component that produces the high associated with recreational use, while CBD does not have intoxicating effects and is often touted for its potential therapeutic benefits. The history of medical marijuana traces back thousands of years, with ancient civilizations using it for various ailments including pain, inflammation, and neurological disorders. Its use in Western medicine began in the 19th century, but declined with the rise of synthetic pharmaceuticals and the regulatory restrictions imposed in the 20th century. Currently, the legal landscape of medical marijuana varies by country and, in the United States, by state. This complex legal environment affects both access and research, complicating the understanding of its efficacy and safety. The benefits of medical marijuana are reported by patients and supported by a growing body of research. Studies have shown that medical marijuana can effectively alleviate chronic pain, a significant issue that affects millions globally. For patients not responding well to traditional pain medications or those experiencing harmful side effects from opiates, marijuana can serve as an alternative treatment option. Furthermore, components of marijuana, like CBD, are observed to have anti-inflammatory properties, which could help in conditions like rheumatoid arthritis. Another area where medical marijuana has found a role is in the management of neurological disorders. There's evidence to suggest that cannabis can reduce the frequency of epileptic seizures, particularly in treatment-resistant forms of epilepsy. Some of the cannabinoids in marijuana interact with receptors in the nervous system, helping to regulate neuronal activity and potentially relieving seizures. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has approved a CBD-based medication, Autodidact, for the treatment of 2 severe forms of childhood epilepsy. Nausea and vomiting associated with chemotherapy have also been addressed using medical marijuana. Certain cannabinoids can act on the brain's receptors that control nausea and vomiting, and patients undergoing chemotherapy have reported significant symptom relief with medicinal cannabis use. This palliative aspect of medical marijuana proves beneficial for cancer patients, not only managing these side effects, but also potentially improving appetite and reducing cancer-associated pain. In patients with multiple sclerosis, MS, medical marijuana has been indicated to improve symptoms such as muscle spasticity and neuropathic pain. These improvements may enhance quality of life for individuals with MS by allowing greater mobility and less discomfort. Moreover, people with chronic gastrointestinal disorders like Crohn's disease have reported symptomatic relief from marijuana use, which may be related to cannabinoids' modulatory actions on gut inflammation and motility. Despite these purported benefits, the use of medical marijuana is not without controversy. One of the primary concerns is the lack of standardized dosing and mode of delivery. Smoking marijuana exposes patients to potential respiratory risks and carcinogens, while edible forms come with challenges around controlling dosage and delayed onset of effects. Other methods of delivery, such as vaporization or sublingual sprays, aim to reduce risks but require further research to establish guidelines for safe and effective use. Another significant concern is the psychoactive effects of THC, which can lead to side effects like altered perception, impaired coordination, and cognitive difficulties. These effects can limit the practicality of THC-dominant marijuana strains in some patients, especially the elderly, those with mental health conditions, and individuals in professions requiring high levels of cognition and coordination. As a result, some clinicians and patients prefer CBD-rich strains or isolated CBD preparations, which do not have intoxicating effects. The long-term impacts of medical marijuana use are not yet fully understood, due in part to the challenges faced in conducting comprehensive studies. Chronic use has been associated with an array of potential risks, including dependency, the exacerbation of mental health issues like psychosis, and the potential for cognitive impairment. Rigorous longitudinal studies are necessary to elucidate these risks and inform both patients and healthcare providers about the long-term safety profile of medical marijuana. Furthermore, the current regulatory environment for medical marijuana complicates its integration into conventional medical practice. In places where it's legal, it is often classified differently from other pharmaceuticals, and healthcare providers are sometimes uncertain about recommending it due to the limited guidance available compared to standard medications. Additionally, its federal status as a Schedule I controlled substance in the U.S. restricts research, thereby inhibiting the development of evidence-based practices. Lastly, the ethical considerations surrounding medical marijuana cannot be overlooked. Patients suffering from debilitating conditions often seek immediate relief from their symptoms, and medical marijuana may represent a source of hope. However, the medical community has the responsibility to ensure that recommendations are based on solid evidence and that the potential for harm is minimized. Balancing this ethical obligation with the desire to provide compassionate care remains a central tension within the conversation about medical marijuana. Medical marijuana offers several potential benefits for a range of conditions, particularly where conventional treatments have failed or caused adverse effects. Nevertheless, controversies stem from the need for standardized dosing, unknown long-term effects, the psychoactive properties of THC, regulatory challenges, and ethical considerations. Future research is crucial to resolving these issues, and as evidence mounts, medical marijuana may become a more widely accepted component of healthcare. 6.10 Cannabis legislation, a global overview. Cannabis legislation varies significantly around the world, with some countries having decriminalized or legalized its use, while others continue to enforce strict prohibition. The landscape of cannabis law has been rapidly changing as governments recognize the potential medical benefits of cannabis, consider the implications of criminalization, and seek to regulate its use to prevent abuse. It is critical to understand that this information is subject to change as legislative bodies continue to debate and modify cannabis laws. In the United States, the legal status of cannabis is complex due to the differences between federal and state law. Federally, cannabis remains classified as a Schedule I substance under the Controlled Substances Act, which means it is considered to have a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use, rendering it illegal for all purposes. However, as of my knowledge cutoff in 2023, numerous states have passed their own legislation to permit medical cannabis, and many have decriminalized or legalized recreational use. These state laws often establish regulations regarding cultivation, distribution, and sale of cannabis that conflict with federal law. Canada serves as a prominent example of cannabis legislation on a national level. In 2018, Canada became the second country in the world after Uruguay to legalize cannabis for recreational use. The Cannabis Act created a strict legal framework for controlling the production, distribution, sale, and possession of cannabis across Canada. The approach was designed to keep cannabis out of the hands of youth, displace the illegal market, and protect public health and safety by providing adults access to legal cannabis. In contrast to Canada, the United Kingdom maintains stricter controls on cannabis. Cannabis is classified as a Class B drug under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, making possession, supply, and production illegal. However, in recent years, there has been a shift towards recognizing the medicinal benefits of cannabis. As of my last update, the UK law has changed to allow specialists to prescribe medicinal cannabis under certain conditions. Other European countries exhibit a range of legislation, from tolerating personal use and possession to outright prohibition. Latin American countries have diverse cannabis laws as well. Uruguay was the first nation globally to fully legalize cannabis in 2013, including its production and sale. This move was part of a public health initiative aimed at combating drug trafficking. Other Latin American countries have since introduced legislation permitting medicinal cannabis or decriminalizing personal possession in varying degrees. In many of these countries, initiatives are ongoing to develop legal frameworks that address both the public health concerns and the potential economic benefits of cannabis legalization. In Asia, cannabis laws are generally quite strict. Many countries have harsh penalties for cannabis possession and use. For instance, in countries like Singapore, Japan, and China, penalties for drug offenses including cannabis can be severe, including long prison sentences, hefty fines, or even capital punishment. These stringent policies reflect the conservative stance on drugs that prevails across much of the continent. Australia's cannabis policy has seen significant change, moving towards acceptance of its medical value. Medicinal cannabis is legally available in Australia for patients with certain conditions, provided they have a prescription from a medical practitioner. Furthermore, some parts of the country have moved to decriminalize personal cannabis use, though the plant remains illegal under federal law for recreational use. Africa presents a mosaic of cannabis legislation. South Africa, for instance, has taken progressive steps by decriminalizing the private cultivation and use of cannabis for adults, following a landmark constitutional court ruling in 2018. Other African nations maintain strict anti-cannabis laws with varying degrees of enforcement. The continent's approach to cannabis legislation is evolving, with discussions around decriminalization and potential medical benefits gaining traction in several countries. In the Middle East, cannabis laws are mostly strict, with many nations having zero-tolerance policies. However, there are exceptions, such as Israel, which is a global leader in medicinal cannabis research and has a government-regulated medical marijuana program. In contrast, nearby countries may impose extremely harsh penalties for cannabis possession or trafficking, reflecting their stringent anti-drug laws. On the international level, cannabis is regulated under treaties like the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs of 1961. Under international law, cannabis is considered a narcotic drug, and signatory countries are expected to limit its possession, use, and trade except under license for medical and scientific purposes. International bodies such as the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, monitor and support the implementation of these treaties. Cannabis legislation is a dynamic and diverse aspect of international law. It is shaped by shifting societal attitudes, scientific research, economic considerations, and individual governments' approaches to drug policy and public health. As the debate over cannabis use continues, so too will the landscape of global cannabis law. It is vital for those interested in cannabis legislation to remain informed of ongoing legal developments, as regulatory frameworks around the world are subject to rapid change and reinterpretation.